Welcome back everyone to another monthly recap. We have an absolutely stacked recap for you. So many members of our community sent in footage alongside their tests, and we want to sincerely thank everyone who took the extra time and effort out of their day to do so. You make these possible and give so many people some clear visuals to see exactly how these disc builds are gonna play. So let's get right into it. Here are some of the highlights that we added into the DoesItPlay database in May of 2026. First on the list is DMC Devil May Cry for the PS4. We tested this on the PS5 via backwards compatibility and found almost no issues here. The only real thing of note is that occasionally you will get to see some very minor graphical artifacts at the end of certain combos. Despite this, the DLC is also present on disc and the game is fully beatable. And no frame rate issues or crashes were observed by our testers. A very stable experience overall. Quite possibly the most anticipated Switch 2 release of the year, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle was promised to be fully complete on cart. Unfortunately, that still seems to be a long lost treasure that Indy is yet to find. While we are pleased to say that the game and all previous updates are included on the cart, the build itself was dragged down by a myriad of frame rate issues, graphical oddities, and many frequent crashes, which border on unplayable, especially if you're sensitive to epilepsy. But if you are still interested in it, we have a dedicated review video on our channel for more information. Again though, we feel the need to give people an epilepsy warning before checking it, because it is rough. Keeping with the Bethesda theme, this month we also tested Fallout 4's Xbox One build. One crash during a specific questline doesn't deter from a solid experience, neither does the typical Bethesda jankiness, like one instance where we had a dead enemy ragdoll high into the sky, entering a small area where the Pip-Boy would display incorrectly every time it was lifted up, walking around in invisible power armor at one point, and one instance where smoke resting in a corner would display incorrectly on top of some minor softlock. Still, the game is fully beatable without any patches required, and for a Bethesda release, most of this is kind of expected. If only Bethesda could still churn out mostly competent disc builds like this, so we could still play them after a nuclear apocalypse destroys all their servers. Let's keep the Xbox train going with Subnautica Below Zero, which we tested on the Xbox Series X. Now, this is a smart delivery game, which has gotten a bit of a reputation for getting terrible physical releases with an online connection often being required to install the games. This one, however, does not, though only the Xbox One version is present on a disc. And that doesn't mean this release is free from trouble either. The full report for this on our website has an almost dizzying amount of little issues. But unlike the original Subnautica release on Xbox, which is so broken that we'd almost classify it as unplayable, this one is stable enough. Expect to see some minor issues like some weirdness with the rock puncher enemies being stuck in terrain or just flat out spawning in midair, an occasional missing audio line like we had with Marguerite here, some lighting issues like a shadow having a delayed load in after teleporting, objects disappearing when looking at them at certain angles like the base doors or even this platform during the ending sequence, and some enemies that will sometimes fall through the floor like we encountered once with a Snowstalker enemy and with an Ice Worm enemy, which really takes away a bit of their intimidation factor. Yes, this disc build has a good amount of issues, but it never becomes unbearable. The worst issue we encountered was one near the end, where getting out of a vehicle in a specific corner of a cave would cause the swimming mechanic to be disabled, so the game essentially treated it like you were walking on dry land even though you're literally at the bottom of the ocean. You might not even encounter this issue on a casual playthrough though, and fixing it is as simple as getting back into your vehicle. This is a flawed yet serviceable disc build for a flawed yet serviceable game. Next up we have Marvel's Avengers, released all the way back at the start of the PS5 and Xbox Series generation. Though this was first released on PS4 and Xbox One. Unfortunately, those last generation versions of the game required a download to even start it. In sharp contrast, the PS5 version works entirely off the disc without patches, and the campaign was fully playable with very few issues. The only caveat is that the game received extensive post-launch content via free updates, which does require a download to access. So if you were excited to play characters like Hawkeye, Kate Bishop, Black Panther, Spider-Man, Winter Soldier, and Lady Thor, we may have some bad news for you. High on Life 2 released in February of this year, but the physical version was delayed by several months. Thankfully, this meant that the physical release is more stable than the day one digital build, and it can be played through with only minor issues. We encountered some shadow flickering and one bug where putting the console to sleep and waking it would make characters and objects unable to be interacted with. Exiting and relaunching the game from the Xbox Media Bar fixed this, and the game ran mostly without issue afterwards. The only exception being some frame rate drops in some areas with dense vegetation or lots of effects on screen, such as certain boss fights. Nintendo has a new game out on Switch 2, which means it's one of the rare occasions where one can expect a guaranteed complete physical release on the platform. And that's exactly what we got here. Yoshi and the Mysterious Book runs as great as it visually looks. The only minor thing of note is that you do get little frame rate stutters when switching chapters in the book or when there are a lot of effects on screen. Nevertheless, this is another great first-party cartridge build to add to the Switch 2's slow-growing collection of physical games. Because we're still in the early days of Switch 2 getting more options for cartridge sizes, we haven't seen a whole lot of indie games getting released physically on the platform. Mio Memories and Orbit is among the first, and we hope it can set a precedent for indie games with good cartridge builds on Switch 2, because this is an excellent release. It's pretty much always at 60 FPS, and all the content is fully accounted for. The only minor issue we had was one where after defeating the Anra boss, a door on the floor opens, but this door is unenterable and you can still walk over it as if it's shut. Looking at patch notes for the game, this was a known bug that has since been fixed, but as it stands, it's not a reason to skip over the physical release. We salute the developers and publisher of Mio for giving us such a stellar release on Switch 2. Any complete physical on Switch 2 is one we deeply treasure. When College Football 25 released, it broke historical records, becoming the best-selling sports video game in US history. At the time, we tested it on the base PS5 and had mostly high praises for the disc build. This month, we fired the game up on the PS5 Pro and it remains a stellar experience. College Football 25 supports offline accounts, 1-4 players, mini-games, open practice, dynasty, and road to glory modes. There are colorblind and accessibility settings available, as well as custom difficulty sliders. As the cherry on top, it all plays at a smooth 60 FPS. There is a common bug where the PlayStation art arrows will wiggle around the field, making it harder to see player pads. We did also have minor visual bugs concerning the NPC crowds and football player info not displaying in the highlights. It's also possible for character models to glitch around the field goal during celebrations. But despite the occasional issue, much of our playtime was enjoyable and bug-free. Next is Tiny Terry's Turbo Trip, a charming open-world adventure game. We have very few issues with this title in its normal form, aside from some jankiness with cameras at times and some traversal stuttering, which is commonplace for the Switch generally. Unfortunately, the Turbo mode, which increases the resolution and uncaps the frame rate to 60 when played on Switch 2, did see some instability under certain conditions. We'd also like to give a huge thank you to Super Rare Games for providing a review copy to us. But how does a first-party game fare through backwards compatibility on Switch 2? The answer? Pretty much flawlessly. Nintendo chose to block some physical first-party Switch 1 releases on Switch 2 for some reason, meaning they are unplayable without first installing a patch. Thankfully, Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury isn't one of them. We've tested this in both docked and handheld mode using the newly added boost feature, and they both ran pretty much flawlessly at a constant 60 FPS. The touchscreen is disabled in handheld mode when using the boost mode, but thankfully the game supports using gyro for these sections instead. The only issue we really found is in Luigi Bros, which is fully playable. However, the game will crash when you press the minus button at any point. We briefly tested this on a Switch OLED and confirmed that this is a problem that the Switch 2 introduces. Still, that's not a deal breaker in any way. This is an excellent physical release to experience on Switch 2 hardware. We're on a roll with Switch 2 backwards compatibility tests, so let's keep it going for just a little bit longer with Sword Art Online Fractured Daydream. This is a bit of an odd release. Story mode is playable and is represented pretty well on the physical release, all things considered. However, that's the only mode available here. Boss raids, free roam, and co-op quests all require an update to be downloaded via the internet. And the game really insists that you play in online mode. Every time you start the game, it'll greet you with multiple prompts almost begging you to connect to the internet. Still, they can all be skipped, and the main game is here, but this has got a pretty rare yellow yes rating from us when labeling its offline playability. Up next, we have a rarity. Saints Row the Third Remastered was only available physically via the Japanese Sero release. Unfortunately, this release isn't without its fair share of issues. One of our testers found that selecting male voice 2 for the player character would cause various sequences to break or be delayed, even resulting in reproducible crashes. The silver lining is that with male voice 1 selected, the game and all of its DLCs could be completed. However, the frequent crashes, censorship, and a weird face bug we encountered in one cutscene prevent this from being released that we can recommend. Let's quickly take a look at a game that fares far better on the PS5. Directive 8020 is a very solid experience on this console. The only small problems we encountered were some crackly audio and a frame rate stutters during some stealth sections, missing icons on the UI, which doesn't make the puzzle in question unsolvable, and probably the biggest glaring issue we had was when the message screen on one of the characters did not properly disappear behind them during a cutscene. Some little hiccups in this release, but nothing too major. we were comfortable enough to give it a proper green reading on our database. It's not all sunshine and rainbows over on the PS5 though. Despite the backwards compatibility for PS4 games being great, you won't see them improve broken disc builds all too much. Such is the case for Warlock's Tower. The fact that the game crashed once is the least of our worries here. There are multiple stages that are inaccessible due to a progression bug. That immediately grants it an orange rating from us. This disc build has a lot of little issues like trophies not properly unlocking and stage titles not appearing correctly a lot of the time. Just a very messy physical release overall that we have a hard time recommending. And let's end things off with a PlayStation game published by Sony themselves. Usually first-party titles come with very good physical releases, at least on PlayStation and Nintendo, and Sorrows is no exception. This is a very good disc build with only the occasional small fumble. Like 2 times where optional dialogue wouldn't play, one enemy being seen stuck in the level terrain, and a very funny looking issue where a duplicate gun would remain on the ground after being picked up in a cutscene. But those are the main issues here, and they're negligible. Sorrows, for the most part, is how we like to see first-party physical releases. We always love to see a flawless disc build, but we definitely have some leniency for small problems, which is the case here. We get so many new reports through our database each and every month, and because of that, we won't have time to go over each and every single one. So for full written reports on these games, as well as the ones we couldn't fit in this video, you can go check out the database for yourself over at DoesItPlay.org. And if you don't want to miss any tests or just want to support our video creation efforts, our Patreon is the place to do that. Click the link in the description to learn more. So, which of these games did you pick up, or are you planning to pick up now that you know a little more about their builds? And let us know which physical games releasing in June you would like to see us cover. See you next month, everyone. Have a good one.